If you've already burned through the obvious 100-hour RPGs and you're hunting for something deep that nobody talks about, this list is for you. These are 10 massive, systems-heavy RPGs that could easily swallow your next few weeks, and most people have never heard of them. Outward treats you like an ordinary person in a world that doesn't care whether you make it. There's no chosen one framing, no fast travel between major locations, and no forgiving respawn system. When you die, you wake up somewhere else, stripped of gear, potentially imprisoned, forced to claw your way back. The game demands preparation the way a real journey would. Before heading into the wilderness, you pack food, water, cold weather gear, torches. You plan a rest camp. You think about what could go wrong. The magic system is legitimately brilliant. Spells don't work on their own. You combine them through rituals and environmental interactions. Placing a fire sigil, stepping inside it, and then casting spark creates a fireball. Runes stack to amplify effects. Learning what combinations exist and how to execute them mid-combat, while managing stamina and survival meters, creates a layer of genuine skill expression that most RPGs don't bother with. I loved finding a new combination that unlocks something devastating I hadn't expected. The combat itself is the game's weakest link. It's slow and imprecise, and fighting multiple enemies simultaneously is often more chaos than tactics. The world can also feel too empty in some areas, and the lack of quest markers means losing progress to genuine confusion rather than intentional challenge more than it should. Co-op genuinely improves almost all of these issues. The Definitive Edition bundles both DLC expansions, which add substantial content and 2 new regions. Going in solo requires real patience, but for players who want an RPG that treats survival as something you actually earn, not a UI element you manage, this is close to essential. Caves of Qud is the most ambitious thing on this list, and possibly the strangest RPG I've ever played. Set in a far future science fantasy world where ancient civilizations have collapsed and humanity shares the earth with sentient plants, robots, and mutant creatures, it puts you in control of either a cybernetic true kin or a mutated human built from over 70 possible mutations. For arms, telepathy, wings, corrosive gas, cloning yourself. The character creation alone can take an hour. The world simulation is what makes it genuinely unlike anything else. Every run generates a unique history. Ancient rulers who shaped the world in specific ways, faction relationships that form and break, historical sites built from those events. Item descriptions carry lore. NPCs reference real events from your run's generated past. The writing has a distinct, poetic voice that makes even mundane objects feel like artifacts from a lost civilization. It earned a Hugo Award for narrative, which is wild for a game with tile graphics. Permadeath is the primary caveat. Losing a character you've nurtured for 40 hours is genuinely painful, and the game doesn't soften that. The visuals are also extremely minimal, ASCII adjacent, which is a hard barrier for some players regardless of what's underneath. Combat can also feel abruptly lethal before you understand the systems, and the interface, while improved significantly in the 1.0 release, still takes time to internalize. This is a game that asks for real investment. What it gives back, though, is a world that feels alive in a way few games have ever managed. Avernum Escape from the Pit is old school in the best sense. You're exiled to an enormous underground cave system, the prison of an empire that banishes anyone who speaks out, and the world you find there has been building its own civilization in the dark for years. The map is genuinely massive. Hundreds of NPCs have things to say. Side quests branch in unexpected directions. 3 major quest lines drive the main story. But the game's real value is in exploring every corner of this underground nation and finding what's been buried there. The classless character system gives you full freedom to build your party however you want. Any character can learn any skill: a warrior who casts spells, an archer who picks locks, a hybrid that shouldn't work but does. The turn-based tactical combat rewards careful positioning and resource management, and the difficulty curve, while steep in places, generally respects what you're building toward. Finding a powerful item through pure exploration and watching your archer become unstoppable as a result is exactly the kind of progression loop this type of RPG does best. The presentation will filter some people out immediately. This looks and sounds like a 1990s game, functional, minimal, and unflashy. The writing is competent but not cinematic. Characters exist to populate a world rather than carry emotional arcs. Difficulty spikes mid-game can also feel frustrating when enemies outscale your party with no warning. None of that changes what it fundamentally is: one of the most content-dense underground worlds ever built in an RPG, made by a tiny team that has been doing this for decades. For players who value pure content depth over visual polish, Avernum quietly delivers more than most games 3 times its price. War Tales hands you a small group of mercenaries, drops them in a plague-scarred medieval world, and gives you no main quest. Your job is to survive. Pay your people, feed them, keep morale up, take contracts, and slowly turn a ragtag band into a self-sustaining warband. The camp management system alone is a full game. You'll build crafting stations, assign professions to individual mercenaries, manage captured prisoners, tame wild animals, cook meals, and excavate ancient ruins, all between combat missions. The turn-based battles have real tactical weight. Positioning matters, status effects chain together in satisfying ways, and elite enemies genuinely require you to think carefully about how you engage. Catching an enemy out of formation, poisoning a tank, and then stacking bleed damage, finding a synergy between 2 weapons you wouldn't have expected. These moments happen constantly and never feel old. The biggest problem is progression pacing. Getting from one level to the next requires a grind of repetitive fights, and combat encounters can start to feel samey before you've fully unlocked the higher level content. The companions themselves are largely procedurally generated and don't have deep personal storylines, which makes it harder to get attached to them the way you would in a more narrative-driven RPG. There's also no central story pulling you forward. Some people find the sandbox freedom liberating, others find it directionless. I personally think it's one of the best mercenary sims ever made, but you need to go in knowing it rewards patience, not urgency. Low Magic Age is almost embarrassingly niche, and I mean that as a compliment. This is a Chinese indie RPG built entirely around D&D 3.5 combat rules. Feat trees, attack of opportunity, flanking bonuses, concentration checks, 2-weapon fighting penalties. The full mechanical depth of the tabletop rule set turned into a video game. There's an open sandbox adventure mode and an arena mode where you can just build parties and fight forever. For a certain type of player who loves the pure math of build optimization, this is an infinite loop. The sandbox world lets you roam a procedurally generated map, take contracts, raid dungeons, and level your party however you want. No story, no cutscenes, no real structure, just the systems. Building a dual-wielding rogue with a right feat chain and watching it tear apart enemies you couldn't beat a few sessions ago is quietly one of the most satisfying progression loops in the genre. The arena mode is essentially pure build testing with escalating enemies, and it's genuinely addictive once you start chasing efficiency. The game is still technically in early access and shows it. The visuals are minimal, the UI takes adjustment, and some class implementations, the wizard in particular, feel incomplete compared to proper 3.5 rules. Some builds hit a power ceiling and break difficulty balance, while others feel underpowered without much explanation. The game also has no story, no companions with personality, and no narrative to anchor you. If you need emotional investment beyond the mechanics themselves, this won't give it to you. But if D&D combat math is its own reward, nothing else scratches this particular itch. Crystal Project is a solo dev JRPG built around one obsession: the job system. There are 24 classes to unlock by finding crystals scattered across a fully open, voxel-based world, and you can mix and match them however you want. A healer with ninja speed, a scholar wearing plate armor, a mimic copying whatever terrifies you most. The combat is pure turn-based tactics, and the boss difficulty on harder settings is genuinely punishing. These fights feel more like tactical puzzles than stat checks, and I found myself completely rebuilding my party mid-game just to crack a single encounter. The world design feeds into this perfectly. Exploration is platformer style. You're literally jumping between ledges and climbing to find hidden areas, and most of the interesting content is locked behind your willingness to look around. There are no quest markers telling you where the good stuff is. You find it or you don't. The trade-off is obvious once you start. The story is almost non-existent. You're told to find crystals and go on an adventure, and that's largely where the narrative ends. Some players love that pure freedom, others bounce off it hard. The platforming also has some frustrating depth perception issues in tight vertical spaces, and a few job classes feel underpowered compared to others. None of that stopped me from sinking close to 80 hours into it, though. For anyone who loves the mechanical side of JRPGs, theory crafting builds, mastering fights through preparation rather than raw level grinding, Crystal Project scratches an itch that barely anything else does. Symphony of War rethinks tactical RPGs by shifting the focus away from individual units entirely. Instead, you build squads, up to 9 soldiers per unit, and deploy those squads across grid-based battlefields. The fights themselves are automated once they start, which means your real work happens before the battle. Designing formations, balancing frontline defenders with healers and ranged attackers, equipping commanders with artifacts that synergize with the rest of the squad. I spent more time in the army management screen than in any individual fight, and that's genuinely where the game lives. The class system has over 50 unit types, and promoting soldiers through class trees while shaping them around a commander's abilities creates a progression loop that takes 60+ hours to properly explore. The DLC expands this further with additional content and enemy variety. Each map also has bonus objectives, tight time limits, specific targets to eliminate, that reward you for playing efficiently rather than just surviving. Where it stumbles is presentation and story. The writing leans heavily on generic fantasy war drama tropes, and some characters are difficult to care about. The UI requires a lot of clicks to do simple things, especially once you're managing 15+ squads with hundreds of individual units. Battle animations also drag late game when large armies collide. You can speed them up, but the pacing still slows down. If you're going in for the story, this will disappoint. If you're going in to build the perfect military machine, you'll lose weeks to it. Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader puts you in command of a void ship and a dynasty of power in the grimdark far future. As a rogue trader, a space privateer with near unlimited authority, you explore the Coronis Expanse, managing colonies, navigating treacherous warp routes, making political decisions that reshape entire star systems, and fighting turn-based tactical battles with a squad built from the full range of 40k archetypes. A full playthrough lands somewhere around 100 to 130 hours, and that's before you factor in replaying different ideological paths. The tactical combat is the strongest part. Owlcat built a satisfying system with genuine character build depth. You're mixing archetype abilities, gear synergies, and companion talents across a party of 6. The colony management and void ship travel add a genuine strategic layer that most CRPGs don't attempt, and when those systems work together well, the game feels enormous in scope. The problems are real, though. Late-game chapters suffer from pacing issues and some notably unfinished-feeling content compared to the strong early acts. The void ship combat, while thematically exciting, is mechanically tedious in practice. New players without 40k knowledge will face walls of unexplained terminology, and even with the in-game tooltips, the lore density can feel more like homework than immersion. Bugs were also serious at launch, significantly improved by now, but worth knowing going in. For fans of complex CRPGs who want to live inside one of sci-fi's most fascinating universes, though, this is a rare and genuinely massive experience. GeneForge 1 Mutagen has a concept so specific it's hard to believe it works this well. You're a shaper, a wizard whose power comes entirely from creating living creatures. Your creations are your armor, your weapons, your tank, your healer. You shape them from magical essence, upgrade their stats individually, and build an army from scratch. The tension is constant. Spread your essence too thin and your creatures are weak. Pour everything into a small elite squad and one bad fight wipes you out. The political complexity is what makes multiple play throughs worthwhile. Stranded on a forbidden island, you encounter 3 factions of sentient creatures, each with a completely different ideology about whether shapers should hold power. Aligning with them, betraying them, or staying neutral changes the game fundamentally. Some endings are only reachable by playing a specific way through the 80+ zones, which genuinely rewards exploration and experimentation rather than railroading you down a single path. The weaknesses are honest ones. The graphics are dated even by indie standards, and Spiderweb Software's house style is functional rather than beautiful. Dialogue trees occasionally feel unresponsive. NPCs will react as though they know what you've done before you've reported back, which breaks immersion. Some creature types also feel underpowered compared to others despite the customization options, and the spell selection is leaner than fans of the original would prefer. For anyone willing to engage with what it actually is, a dense, morally complex CRPG where your army literally grows from your own body. It's unlike anything else. Star Traders Frontiers puts you in the captain's chair of a starship in a procedurally generated galaxy, then asks, what kind of person are you? Pirate? Spy? Or merchant? Maybe a bounty hunter? The answer shapes everything. Each crew member has their own job roles and talent trees that you develop over time, and managing 25 to 30 people across dozens of skill paths becomes its own long-term obsession. The galaxy itself runs without you. Factions rise and fall, wars start, economies shift, and your decisions ripple through all of it. What keeps pulling me back is how many systems are quietly feeding into each other. Faction relationships affect which missions you can take. Your crew's morale affects combat performance. Every payday becomes a small strategy session. Ship combat, boarding actions, ground missions, espionage. There's always something to do, and doing it well requires actually understanding how the pieces connect. That takes time. A lot of time. The learning curve is steep enough to turn some players away entirely. The UI is dense, tutorials don't hold your hand, and early deaths can feel cheap before you understand the risk systems. There's also a feeling that some playstyle choices, like committing fully to smuggling, end up less rewarding than they should be compared to easier income paths. But once the systems click, this becomes the kind of game you think about when you're not playing it. Building the right crew for a specific dangerous run, then watching it either succeed brilliantly or unravel catastrophically, is the whole loop, and it's addictive.